Hello everyone, I'm Rafi3D, and in today's video I want to share the resources that helped me when I started my 3D journey, my biggest mistakes I made along the way, and what I would do differently if I were starting now. I will be covering free tutorials I recommend and websites that helped me develop my skills. Plus I'll show some of my very early projects and compare them to what I create now. Hopefully this will inspire and encourage you to keep pushing forward in your own creative journey. When I first downloaded Blender, I quickly realized that without tutorials, I wouldn't even be able to move the default cube. So I began with CG Fast Track's free tutorial on creating a sword scene. It covered almost every aspect of Blender: modeling, texturing, scene composition, animation, and rendering. It gave me a pretty good understanding of Blender's capabilities, but to be honest, the tutor was going a little bit too fast for me, and I struggled in some places. After completing this tutorial, I made my first project, a cooking pot. You can't imagine how proud I was of that. I think it's really important to celebrate those small wins while also recognizing the area for improvement. Next, I found a fantastic YouTube channel, CG Boost, and their free tutorial on creating a still life scene. Zach does an amazing job explaining the basics, and he does it in a much more beginner-friendly way. You can learn hard surface modeling, organic modeling, texturing, particle system, compositing, and rendering, all within one tutorial. If you're just starting out with Blender, I would strongly recommend CG Boost. They also have great paid courses that I found invaluable. I'm not an affiliate, I just genuinely think that their content is fantastic and it really helped me grow as an artist. They also build very friendly and helpful community on their website, which I encourage you to join. I will include all the links in the description below. Of course, I also followed the famous donut tutorial. While it might not be for everyone, it provides a solid foundation for understanding basics and more advanced topics. These were my main sources of information when I started, but there are so many more. I followed lots of other tutorials and courses, though many of them were focused on a specific topics or were just paid courses. Maybe I'll cover those in another video. A good source for help and feedback are Facebook groups, though I've noticed that many of them can be pretty toxic. Be cautious in choosing the right one. I personally recommend a group created by one of my friends. It's Blender for Absolute Beginners. It's a well-moderated and friendly community, and I think Brad has done a fantastic job maintaining it. Zach Reinhardt and his CG Boost team had the biggest influence of my development. I also learned a lot from Chris Plush over at CG Masters. His courses on car creation are more advanced, but what I love most is his clean workflow and the way he explains things in a clear, easy to understand manner. Now that I've shared the resources that helped me boost my skills, let's take a look at some of my very first projects and see how they turned out. Here's an axe I made, inspired by CG Masters combat knife tutorial. Here's a CPU model I created. I had a lot of fun texturing it because it required using an alpha channel to add a logo. At the time, figuring that out felt like a big accomplishment. And yes, this cupcake was inspired by the donut tutorial. Finally, here we have some assets I made for the graveyard scene. It was a huge project, even if you can barely see anything. But I'm really proud of these pieces because they were my first projects where I wasn't following a tutorial. One of the toughest challenges I faced early on was figuring out how to move vertices to achieve the shapes I wanted. Maintaining good topology felt like a nightmare, and optimizing scenes to prevent my PC from crashing was a constant struggle. I'd recommend learning these things early, it's essential. Fast forward to today. After 4 years of almost daily practice, I'm creating work that I'm truly proud of. The journey hasn't been easy. Balancing a full-time job with my passion for 3D art has been challenging, and on top of that, I've had to deal with health conditions that sometimes slow me down. But despite those obstacles, I still manage to dedicate at least 2 to 3 hours each day to this craft, and I've seen how that consistent effort has really paid off. It's not just about the skills I've developed. It's about how this creative outlet keeps me motivated and focused, even on the tougher days. It's been incredibly rewarding to see how far I've come, and I'm excited to keep pushing myself further. Now let's talk about things I would do differently if I were starting now. First of all, I wouldn't follow tutorials so rigidly. When I stuck too closely to them, it slowed down my creativity and made it harder for me to start my own projects. Obviously, when you first open Blender, you're probably staring at the default cube and wondering which button deletes it, right? So for the first 1 or 2 tutorials, you'll need to follow them step by step. But once you have a basic understanding of the layout and what each tool does, I recommend experimenting and doing things your way. It doesn't have to be big changes. Maybe you make something orange instead of blue, or instead of making an object a rectangle, make it a sphere. As you get more comfortable, you'll be able to make bigger changes and shape things according to your own vision. After finishing a tutorial, I wouldn't jump straight into another one. Instead, I'd take what I've learned and apply it to my own personal project. Start small. It doesn't have to be a big project. For example, after finishing a donut tutorial, why not making a cupcake or a muffin? By doing this, you develop your own workflow and problem-solving skills. I wouldn't rush into buying paid resources, like courses, add-ons, or software too early on. When you're just starting, there's plenty of content that's incredibly informative and valuable, especially on YouTube. For beginners, free software is usually more than enough to get you going. Blender, for example, has a ton of built-in add-ons that you can activate without paying anything extra. And honestly, Blender alone can do almost everything you'll need. But if you do want to branch out beyond Blender, that's totally fine. Instead of paying for Substance Painter, try Armor Paint. Instead of Photoshop, use GIMP. And for video editing, you can use DaVinci Resolve instead of Adobe Premiere. Make sure you learn your skills the right way from start. By that I mean focusing on the fundamentals like proper topology or edge flow. I've seen a lot of people recommend Blender Bros courses for beginners, and while they do cover the basics and explain things clearly, they don't really emphasize the importance of good topology or edge flow. Instead, they rely on shortcuts. Now, don't get me wrong, using shortcuts can be great if you want to be faster or more efficient, but I don't think it's a good approach for beginners. It's important to first master the proper techniques. Once you've got those down, you can use shortcuts to speed up your workflow. So, sorry Josh, but in my opinion your tutorials are better suited for more advanced artists, even though they are still excellent overall. When I started, I tried to learn everything. Modeling, sculpting, texturing, rendering, rigging, animating, color grading, but it became overwhelming and even discouraging. Now that I'm focusing more on 3D printing and turning my models into physical products, I've specialized more in modeling and preparing files specifically for printing. It's okay to try everything at first, but figure out as soon as you can what excites you the most so you can focus on that. Don't worry about being perfect. Mistakes are the part of the process. The key is to learn from them and grow. Be patient for yourself. It takes time, but if you're consistent, you'll get there. To sum it up, be proud of your creations. Stay consistent. Learn from good sources. And don't be afraid to make mistakes. They are a great way to improve and grow. I'd love to hear your own beginner stories, so drop them in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more creative content. Thanks for watching, and until next time.